So who is Land O'Lakes? I think that if I asked most people who Land O'Lakes is, you would say, we're the butter company, right? I see a guy smiling right here, right? We're the butter company. That's what a lot of people say. But in reality, we're much more than a butter company. The butter company is only one of our 4 diversified divisions, right? And even in that butter company, every time we make a pound of butter, we make 2 pounds of powder. Powder which is used in things like milk chocolate, infant formula, and other things. We also own a brand called Cozy Shack, and if you're from the East Coast, you know Cozy Shack, it's a pudding, right? We own a goat milk company, so we make goat cheese as well. So even on our dairy portfolio, we are more than just a butter company. And then we have Purina Animal Nutrition, right? It's not dog and cat food, that's somebody else, but it's the Purina for farm animals. So horses, cattle, cow, pigs, on and on and on. Right? We also have a brand that has feed for 70% of the zoos in the United States. So we do feeds like alpaca, rhinos, right? Zebras, any kind of feed for a zoo. And we also do lab animals as well. And we have a third business unit called Winfield United, which is seeds and crop protection for the farmer. So you can see we have these 3 organizations that are all focused in on farming is what they are. And then we have a newly formed group called Sustain, and what it's really about is taking what we do in all 3 of those organizations, insights and innovations, to help farmers produce more with less. Because that's the real idea of sustainability, is producing more with less. So you can see if you said we're a butter company, you'd be partially right, is what it comes down to. So in the end, what are we? We're the 3rd largest member cooperative in the United States. About 800 member cooperatives, about 3,500 individual members, 10,000 employees, 290 facilities. That's about 175 distribution centers, and then about 100 plants. We service 300,000 agricultural producers. 25% of all farmers and 50% of the acres in the United States have a relationship to Land O'Lakes. 13 billion pounds of milk per year is what our producers make, and 100 million animals are fed every day. 100 million animals every day are fed by our feed. We're a Fortune $215 billion agribusiness with a focus on the farmer, with one purpose: feeding human progress. That's what our main mission and purpose is to feed human progress. Now you can imagine with these 3 very different businesses, our supply chain has some complexity in it. And you look at it on the surface, you say, it's really not that complex. 4,400 SKUs, anybody who runs the supply chains knows that's not a lot of SKUs. Even if we get to 30,000 SKUs, I mean, anybody can manage 30,000 SKUs. There's plenty of tools and technology to make that happen. 10,000 SKUs. So it's not the SKUs, if you look at the next line, it's not the complexity of the shelf life, but each individual business has something about it that makes it unique. In our case of our dairy business, milk doesn't stop. And since we're a co-op, we have to take that milk. So 13 billion pounds of milk every year we have to take. We have to figure out what to do with it. Okay? And most of us, in a couple weeks, who's going to take time off for Thanksgiving? For 4th of July, right? When Thanksgiving comes around, you're going to sit around the table with your family and friends, right, and have a nice meal, right? Yeah, I'm going to do that. Guess what? The cows don't get to do that. They still have to produce milk. That's what's going to happen. So we got to pick it up, and we got to find a use for it. And the worst part is that the demand for our products and the supply are completely countercyclical. Most of our products, so butter, 40% of it is sold in a 6-week period, right around the holidays. It probably doesn't surprise anyone. Cows, they produce the most milk in the spring, completely countercyclical. So we have to figure out what we're going to do with it in that time. We have to make sure we make the right stuff, right? And to make it worse, our powders are very commodity-like, and so they have a huge impact on the market. So if markets are going down, we really want to produce all that in the spring, but we don't have a choice. So we start to have to hedge and a bunch of other risk activities we have to do. Right? So that's the complexity of our supply chain in the dairy business. It's all around the fact that milk doesn't stop. Okay? In our Purina business, the inputs for our Purina business are byproducts of other products. For example, it's wheat, what we call wheat midds, and soybean meal. So when a soybean processor processes soybean oil, sounds like a lot of fun going on out there. So when a soybean processor processes soybean for oil, what they end up with in reality is the meal that we end up using as part of the ingredient for our feed business. Now you can think about those things, and they're not always available, they're not always consistent, on and on and on. So the bill of materials in our feed business change every week. So think about it, we got 60 to 70 plants where the bill of material for a finished item is changing every week. And we're feeding 100 million animals to do that. Okay? So that's the complexity in our feed business. In our Winfield United business, seeds have to be grown 2 to 3 years in advance to be planted. And then for any given crop, those seeds are generally planted in a 2 to 3 week period. So we have to predict what we need 2 to 3 years in advance, and they all have to be at the right place at the right time in that 2 to 3 week period. And it's heavily impacted by the weather, right? So if it's too dry, they don't plant. It's too wet, they don't plant. So we have to find this 2 to 3 week period that's going to be impacted by weather. Now, how many people think they can predict that? Right? Nobody, right? Including us. Right? But now you understand the complexity of our supply chain. So for the first 85 years of our existence, right? For the first 85 years, we were started in the 1920s. For the first 85 years, we had these functional silos because we said, you know what? The businesses are too different, they're too complex, no need to combine them, right? And that continued for 85 years. About 10 years ago, we said, no, there is a way to combine these. And we started to combine these. And we're moving down this journey to be an operating company. So we started to say, we can combine them for cost, flexibility, standards, all those things that all the supply chain people love to do. And now we're on the second part of that journey, is how do we become customer-centric? That's the part of the journey we're on now, and that's the part I want to talk to you about. The first thing we had to do is we had to link to the vision, the business vision. And we've been going through this exercise with each one of our divisions, with each subdivision, and saying, you know what? We can design any supply chain, and we're pretty good at it. But you got to make a choice. Which one of these three do you want? Do you want a low-cost supply chain or efficient supply chain? Do you want one that's focused on quality service / responsiveness? Or do you want one that's differentiated and innovative? And of course, how many people here who've dealt with businesses who were willing to pick that? They're all saying what? We want all, right? That's what they all say, right? And we said, no, you can't have them all. We can't have them all as a primary. Now, we can try to work around it, but you got to pick one. And the way we explained it to it, which made it very real to them, is we took our feed plant as an example. We said, in our feed plant, we're making bags of feed. Now, we have a couple of choices. We can make that low cost. So what I would do is I'd say every 2 weeks I go through every product, but I'm never going to change that cycle. That would make me low cost for that. If you want me to be responsive, I'm going to have to cut into the schedule every now and then. So I can't be low cost anymore. I'm going to be responsive. And that's how we help the business start to understand why it's so important for them to let us know which one they want. What we ended up with is we've been going through this, and we've done it with 8 different business units so far, business groupings. We probably got another 10, 15 to go. But they've actually chosen, working with us, which one they want to be, right? This is the Gartner hierarchy of metrics model, right? But it's really kind of interesting because now we have a common language to talk to them about. It says, why do you want to be this? What's important? What's not important, right? And even the ones that are responsive, so we did this for 8 so far. Of the 8, 6 were responsive, which didn't surprise us. 1 was low cost, and 1 was innovative. But even the ones that are responsive, the 6 that were responsive, weren't the same. So it was a great exercise to go through them with that so we could have a common language about how do we make priority decisions. And then the last thing we did was we started talking to them about what is your customer going to want in the future? And we've heard a lot of that, whether it was from the Gartner folks or the Advent folks that said, you know what, that's really changing. And we would agree it's really changing, right? And when we talked to each of the business units, what it fundamentally came down to, there's a lot of stuff going on, but what it fundamentally came down to was more segmented products at more locations. So whether you think about what's going on in the grocery trade, that's what we all want, right? So non-GMO, organic, more products, right? More locations online. We're having the same thing going on in our farming community. So for our ag businesses, some of our ag customers, some of our farmers are so big, their property, their farms go across 3 counties in a specific state. And so when that happens and they run out of fungicide, they don't want to go back to the original point to get product. They want the product delivered to where they are. That's what they want. So we have to figure out how that might happen. But so what we heard was more items, more locations, and what I translate that to as a long-time supply chain person was complexity. And how many supply chain people like complexity? Right? No one, right? We hate complexity. We're kind of the opposite. We want standardization, right? But that's what we've come to the realization. Our supply chain, like anyone else's, is going to get more complex. And we have to figure out a way to work with the business on that complexity. So how are we evolving? Some of you may have seen this through Gartner. We've been doing this for about 3 years. This is actually a good way to visualize what we've been doing. So supply chains traditionally have worked on the left-hand side of this thing, right? We are really good at scaling solutions and reducing costs. Somebody said it's the cost of entry, right? It's what we have to do. Supply chains have been doing that forever, and I don't think there's a single supply chain here that doesn't do that well, right? And it's all about standardizing, centralizing. It's what we've been doing as Land O'Lakes probably for the last 7 years. As we said, we're going from functional to operating company. But it's really the right side of this equation that's new for supply chain. It's very different for us. We have to be innovative, something supply chain people don't naturally do, right? We have to now start to say, we need different services for different segments of our business, right? We need to tailor those services. We need to test those things. Supply chains don't like that. And so we coined this thing. We say it's ambidextrous thinking is what it is, right? Some people I've heard it's called left brain, right brain. Same thing. On the left-hand side is what supply chain personnel used to do really well, right? We wanted to be very predictable, incremental improvement, lean, right? Plan-driven. It was all about gathering a bunch of data, learning what you need to learn, aiming at a solution, and firing something off. That's what supply chain people did. Well, the right-hand side is what we're going to have to do in the future. And this is a huge difference for us. We have to be agile instead of predictable. Agile being fast and flexible, right? We have to support uncertainty. How many supply chain people like uncertainty, right? All we hear from everyone else is make it more predictable, make it more... Forget that. That's not going to happen. We have to support uncertainty. We have to figure out how our supply chains can support uncertainty. Right? Disruptive, evolving plan. It's really about aim, fire, and then learn. And it's completely different. That is completely different. And as we've gone through our transformation, our folks will tell you it's not the easiest transformation in the world. It's actually a very difficult transformation. And because of that, the roles are changing for supply chain people, right? In our organization, supply chains on the left-hand side, we used to worry about supply chain performance, end-to-end visibility, right? What's really happened is the right-hand side is really what's becoming more apparent. We have to learn to collaborate better. We have to collaborate with our business partners. We have to collaborate with customers. We have to collaborate with suppliers. We go from being mostly focused on what I call the IQ stuff, which is the left hand, to the EQ stuff, which is the right hand. So intelligence versus emotion. That's what's happening. And because of that, we're starting to define, we've been going down this path for the last 3 years, and we're really looking at how does that really change? What does that really mean? Well, what we see is, for example, the customer, what we used to call logistics managers, right? We all know those people that are responsible for transportation and warehousing. In reality, those people, they're your customer experience maestros. Because if you really think about it, they're the ones that impact the customer directly. So they're orchestrating this whole thing about how the customer feels about you. That's a huge difference, right? So instead of just saying, I'm shipping product, I'm putting product in a warehouse, we're trying to get them to think about you are, in the end, what our customer is going to see, the way that product shows up. That comes from you. So it's about how do we orchestrate that, right? And then supply planners as well as production planners. So if you think about our supply chain, the example I gave you about milk, and we got milk coming in, we got all the constraints in the plant. Do I make butter? Do I make powder? Or do I make some of both? What's the time of year? How a market's going to impact all that? Yada, 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 right? They're really complexity masters. Those are the people that have got to figure out, whether it's with tools or something else, how you take all that complexity and make it more predictable. That's what they have to do. So their jobs are evolving. And then there's no longer going to be any demand planners. They're going to out the window, right? Commercial collaborators. Because really, it's their job to collaborate with the commercial side of our business, whether it's internally or externally, to figure out what's happening so they can get that signal back to our complexity master, so then we can get that back to our maestro so we can deliver the right product. And so in reality, across the bottom is really what's happening. Supply chain people have to be end-to-end is what we have to do. No longer just in terms of supply chain, no longer just, we have to go end-to-end. So what are we doing? I'll give you two quick examples of some stuff that we've done as we've gone through this process. The first one we did, we tried a pilot, an experiment in social transportation. In our feed business, we do a lot of cross-docking. I think 80% of our product, or some ridiculously high number, because we've got so many plants and so many distribution centers. And as you can imagine, as much as I hate to admit it to my business partners, every now and then we missed a shipment, right? And so, they weren't happy with that, right? And so we were trying to find a way to reduce the frustration of our dealers and say, how do we do this better? So we missed the timing of a cross-dock. And so we said, you know what? Why don't we go out, sign up a bunch of people with pickups and vans, because we're missing 1 or 2 bags of product, and have them delivered for us, right? That's a business model we all know, right? Comes from another industry, but we're using it ours. So we started down that path, right? So we took aim at the problem. We fired, we started, and we got a hold of our legal folks. And our legal folks said, man, but they're a transportation carrier. You need, and I forget, 10 million, each one of them need 10 million, $100 million worth of insurance, something ridiculous, right? And I'm like, are you serious? This is a person with a side gig who's just picking up 1 bag for us. You're telling me they really need $10 million worth of insurance? Yep, they really need 10. I'm like, it's ridiculous. So we said, okay, we've just learned, now we got to go back to this process again. So we aim again, and we find a partner who's willing basically to hire those drivers, or at least be the middle person for those drivers, and then we would just go with this company. And so that's the plan we went down. So we go down that path, everything works well, we're doing a really good job at this thing, and we're getting feedback that is so positive. Even as a supply chain person, I can't believe it. It's things like, best service Land O'Lakes has ever provided, right? Nobody else is doing this for us. We're sticking with you guys. I mean, it's the kind of stuff that supply chain people dream of, right? Because we usually get in the other side of the equation, right? Terrible service, you guys got to deliver better, right? This was completely the other side. So things are going well. We're thinking about rolling it out to all of our sites. And of course, things never go that smooth. We had a little problem. So the plan here was that the way we worked with this organization was we call by 10, they pick up by 12, and they deliver by 2, because it's a 100-mile radius around our facility is what we said. Okay? Well, so we're going down this process, maybe a month into it. A driver shows up to one of our facilities, our pilot facility, at 11:30 to pick up product. Now, what happens around 11:30, 12 o'clock in any warehouse anybody knows? I see some smiles here, right? They're on break. They're taking lunch. So the warehouse guy told the driver, I can't load you. I'm on break. I'm like, wait a minute. That's not the way this is supposed to work, right? Now, that doesn't mean the warehouse person did anything wrong, because they're just doing what they're supposed to do. And so we had to go back. So we fired, we learned, we went back, we talked to the warehouse and said, okay, look, when this driver shows up, this is you got to load this person, so let's figure out how we do this. So we rolled it out to all 60 sites eventually. We got a process, and it's still not working as well as we like. So we're going back to the drawing board, and we're trying again. But this is that whole process of, aim, fire, learn. And we've been through this cycle now 3 times with this one thing, and it's still not exactly where we want it. The other one we're working on is something called hub and spoke. So we took this out of another industry. So on the left-hand side of this, those are the lanes we used to ship product across in our ag business. And the reason is we got 132 distribution centers for this stuff. And so think about weather impacts, everything. So what would happen in the beginning of the season, each one of these sites would order the product they need, or what they thought they need, right? But who here thinks they can predict when the pesticide outbreak's going to come, or the fungicide outbreak? And when we're wrong, guess what we had to do? See those lines? We're shipping product all over the United States to get the product in the right place. And we said, there's got to be a better way. There just has to be a better way. So we thought about the automotive parts industry, right? You go to an automotive store and you say, I need this part. And, most of the time they'll have it, so Pep Boys, AutoZone, O'Reilly's, wherever you're from. But sometimes they say, you know what? We don't have it here. It's in our warehouse, and we'll have it here for you in the next 3 hours. We said, that's a model we should use for this business, because it's the exact same issue. So we did a pilot. The right-hand side is what we're working on. We did a pilot where we're going to do hub and spokes. We did one this season. It actually worked out really well. The business loves it. Everybody got their product. It reduced our costs. So now we're going to roll this out across all the sites. Once again, this whole concept of we aimed at something, and that something was to reduce costs and increase responsiveness. We fired a shot, which was the pilot, hub and spoke. We learned, it wasn't perfect. We did learn some things, and so we're going to roll out a few more of these. So you can see that in this journey we're on, right? Two of those I mentioned to you, right? The social transportation one I mentioned, which is the second one in the right-hand box there. I also mentioned hub and spoke. The difference is that social transportation one's been around this circle probably 3 times already, right? Us trying to do this. But you can see we've got programs and projects and ideas in each one of these phases. We're working with Otto and Uber on autonomous vehicles, right? We're looking at digitization of visibility for our trucks, right? We're collaborating with a major retailer. So as we're transforming to this more customer-centric organization, we have to do a lot of little things, because remember, it's about segmenting the service for a specific portion of your business in the future. So the results, what have we seen? Well, first of all, we've absolutely seen this migration. Is it easy? Nope. Is it going to take a long time? Yep. And it's a journey, right? And it's a long journey. You know, it took us almost 7 years from the time we started Functional Silos to get to the operating company. My guess is this is an even longer journey. I mean, no deference to people like Gartner and other places that I talk with all the time. It's like, it's not happening as fast as you think it is, because people don't want to change that. It's just hard. It's hard to think differently. It's hard to make that jump. And as organizations, as I lead my organization of 6,000 people, I got to say, what pace can they take that change, right? Because if you have a revolution, right, and think about it, how many people here, study history? In most revolutions, what happens? People get hurt, and they go backwards eventually. We believe this has to be an evolution, and that's why we're going so slow. So some of the other results. I could talk to you about results like forecast errors. We've got forecast errors that used to be in the 50s that are now in the 70s kind of range, and that's by week, by item, by customer. So the forecast is way up. Our customer services is way up. Our on time is way up. But that's not the one that really matters. Here's the only one that matters. So if you're going through this transformation, you ought to think about this. This is the only one that matters. We have doubled the size of our company and tripled the margins in our company. Now, I would like to take credit for that as a supply chain person, right? Every supply chain, that's all us, right? It's not all us, right? It's about partnering with the business. It's about understanding what's the value of your company. What are the values? Where are you focused? What are you working on? And I have a short video here for us. So for us as an organization, you can see that it's really about feeding human progress. And everything we do is revolved around that farmer and trying to help that farmer do that. Thank you.
I was given a statistic, Yone, that by 2050 we're going to need 100% more food than we have today, and out of that 100%, 70% of it's got to come from continuous improvement. I think you just made the case.
We have the same kind of statistics. We talk about there's going to be, we see it as 70%, but 100 is fine. And part of the reason is because there's this growing middle class, and as the middle class grows, what happens is they go from what we call starchy food, so grains and those kind of things, to proteins. And there's a statistic that basically says, for every pound of chicken, it takes 1.2 pounds of grain. For every pound of swine, it takes like 4 pounds of grain. And for every pound of beef, it takes 10 pounds of grain. And so you can see as people move up the chain for proteins, they need more and more. So even though the population's only going to go from 7 to 9, that growth is caused by people saying, I want more protein and less starchy.
Brilliant. Okay. Questions for Yone? Yes, sir, right down the front.
Thank you for your presentation.
Hang just 1 second, so we've got a microphone coming for
Let's
you.
get that mic.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for your presentation and your patience with whatever was going on outside.
Yeah, that was a tough call. Well done,
That's
Yone.
all right.
Anyway, I'd like to know a little more about your same-day service approach. You kind of touched on it. Could you go into a little more detail exactly how it's structured?
Yeah, so what we're doing, as I said, so in that specific area, what we're doing is saying that if a customer orders a product, and the reason that they're not getting the product is because of us. So it's not because they ordered late or anything like that. They ordered on time. That we are going to do everything in our power as a supply chain to give it to them that day. So if it doesn't make the first truck, as I call it, that's that service we have that says, we're going to call this service, and we're going to have the service pick it up. Even though it costs us more, that's what we owe to the customer, because we need to give the customer a good experience. Yep.
Okay. Any more questions for Yone? I can see out there. Yeah, one right at the back. She's getting some exercise now. Isn't she? Yeah.
Hi, with that innovation of effectively a really massively improved, I don't know whether you'd call it last mile service, how have you ensured that those people are really representative of your business?
Say that again. I didn't catch the first part.
How do you ensure that the people that the great program you went through of guys in vans and pickups doing that, I guess, last mile service for you are really representative of you as a business?
How do you make sure that all those people that are doing that in your social experiment, how are you getting those people to wear your hat and behaving the way you want to?
Well, for us, it's about selecting the right partners. For us, it's about, this idea that, we want to collaborate with people, and we will only select the right partners. And the person who actually ran that program for us is in this room, so he can answer them in details. Raise your hand, Tom. I'm not going to let you get away with this. So he can talk to you about some of the issues we've been through, but it's not easy, and that's why we do see it as a journey. We don't see this as the first time through it worked. You can see that it took us 3 times through, and it still doesn't work, right? And for me, that's okay. Right? I mean, I think that's what you have to think about. It is a journey. It's not something that happens overnight. And if you want to have it overnight, I guarantee this, you will fail, and I guarantee you'll have a lot of unhappy people.
Jan, it seems to me that you're echoing what other people are saying, which is fail fast and cheap. That's the way to do it.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much indeed.